Your greed has cost you everything tonight, Helen Thompson said quietly as she adjusted the papers on the oak desk, her eyes cold and steady, observing Romy Johnson's forced smile falter. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and lemon cleaner. The afternoon sun slipping through the blinds casting sharp lines across the carpet, highlighting the tension. William Thompson sat beside his mother, his posture stiff, hands folded on his lap, glancing between the two women with unease. Helen's gaze swept over the will, every line of text meticulously prepared, a lifetime of care and investment distilled into legal language that Romy had assumed she could manipulate. Romy shifted in her seat, the heels of her shoes clicking lightly against the hardwood floor, a sound that seemed to echo unnaturally in the quiet room. Helen recalled the months of subtle deceit, the small manipulations, the whispered suggestions that had guided her son into decisions that favored Romy, while obscuring the truth from Helen herself. She felt a faint tightening in her chest but did not move. She did not flinch. Instead, she allowed the silence to stretch, thickening around them, letting Romy's anticipation and underlying anxiety grow until it became palpable. Each second was measured, deliberate, the tension building as if the walls themselves were leaning in to witness the unraveling. Romy's fingers drummed lightly against the edge of the desk, an unconscious rhythm that betrayed her inner agitation, and Helen noticed the faint crease forming between her eyebrows as realization began to dawn. William's eyes flickered with a hint of doubt, his lips parting slightly before he pressed them together, a silent acknowledgement that he, too, was beginning to see the reality Helen had long understood. Helen remained seated, composed, letting the weight of her presence fill the space. The letters and numbers, the precise distribution of assets, the careful wording all combined to reveal the consequences of Romy's choices, her attempts at manipulation rendered ineffective, her plans collapsing under the clarity of truth. Helen's mind was calm, each detail she had observed over the past weeks lining up perfectly, a silent satisfaction forming at the edges of her awareness. Romy's attempts to interject, to plead or explain, faltered, words catching in her throat as the finality of the documents became undeniable. Helen's eyes met hers briefly, unflinching, and in that quiet, measured glance, the outcome was unmistakable. William leaned back slightly, exhaling softly, the tension easing just a fraction as the realization settled fully. Helen did not smile, did not gloat, but the subtle shift in her posture and the controlled tone of her breathing communicated everything necessary. The balance had shifted, and the reckoning, long anticipated, had arrived. Outside, the wind rustled faintly through the trees surrounding the suburban estate, a reminder of the ordinary world continuing even as the household's private drama reached its apex. Romy's face paled, her previous confidence evaporating in the presence of careful preparation and unyielding composure. Helen's hands rested lightly on the table, each finger splayed slightly, an anchor to her steadiness. She had anticipated every move, had prepared for every eventuality, and now the result was unfolding exactly as it should, without haste, without dramatics, every moment a testament to patient vigilance and deliberate observation. The documents were final, the reading complete, and the quiet authority in Helen's posture spoke louder than any declaration could. Leaving Romy to confront the consequences she had so thoroughly earned, and Helen to remain resolute, the calm eye at the center of a storm of her own measured design. Helen Thompson sat quietly in the study the morning after the will reading, the soft light from the east-facing windows illuminating the neat rows of books and framed photographs lining the walls. She moved deliberately, setting the tea tray on the polished oak table, each cup and saucer arranged with care, as if the morning itself required precision to counterbalance the events of the previous night. William Thompson lingered nearby, his brow furrowed, glancing occasionally at the legal documents Helen had placed on the counter for review. Romy Johnson was noticeably absent, choosing instead to remain in her suite upstairs. Her presence felt more in the weight of anticipation and tension than in any physical action. Helen poured the tea with measured grace, the warm aroma of chamomile filling the air, a small comfort against the lingering strain of late-night revelations. She recalled the subtle indications over the past weeks that had hinted at Romy's intentions, the calls that seemed too carefully timed, the discussions about estate planning that skirted key details, the casual mentions that suggested she had access to information before anyone else. Helen allowed herself a brief moment to observe the quiet around her. The way the house seemed unchanged, yet charged with the memory of confrontation. The hardwood floors gleamed faintly in the morning light, and the faint ticking of the antique clock in the corner marked the passage of time with unyielding regularity. She reviewed the documents again, checking the alignment of dates, the clarity of bequests, the exact phrasing that would prevent any ambiguity. Each line reinforced the security of what had been intended and the fairness of the outcome, a structure built over decades of careful planning and attention to detail. William finally spoke, his voice low and reflective, noting his surprise at how methodical Helen had been in anticipating potential complications. Helen responded with calm acknowledgement, her words concise, free of emotion, conveying the precision of her thought without a trace of gloating. Outside, the wind moved through the autumn leaves, brushing lightly against the windows, a reminder of continuity beyond the walls of the house. Helen's mind traced the sequence of interactions with Romy, the calculated patience she had exercised, the small but decisive actions that ensured the integrity of the estate. She moved from the kitchen to the sitting room, arranging a few papers, straightening the cushions on the sofa, each gesture a reinforcement of her composed presence. William observed silently, absorbing the methodical way his mother managed the aftermath, recognizing the depth of her foresight and restraint. In the quiet, Helen's thoughts were clear, precise, and unhurried, mapping the events that had transpired, understanding the dynamics, and appreciating the necessity of careful observation and measured action. The house itself seemed to exhale, the tension of the previous evening dissipating slightly as the morning unfolded, leaving Helen as the center of calm and quiet authority, fully aware of the shifts in power and perception that had occurred, and of the subtle adjustments required to maintain that balance in the hours and days to come. Helen Thompson walked slowly through the sunlit hallway, her hand lightly tracing the polished banister as she moved, her mind retracing the events of the previous day with deliberate clarity. Each photograph along the wall told a story of family milestones, anniversaries, and quiet moments, all of which had been influenced subtly by Romy Johnson's manipulations, yet Helen observed them now with measured detachment, noting how perception and intent had diverged. In the sitting room, William Thompson sat near the window, his hands resting on the armrests of the leather chair, eyes downcast as he contemplated the consequences of his choices and the realization of his mother's foresight. Helen paused briefly, arranging the throw pillows with a precise touch, each motion a demonstration of calm authority and control, her attention to detail reflecting the discipline she had maintained for decades. The soft hum of the heating system and the faint aroma of brewed coffee created an atmosphere of normalcy that contrasted sharply with the undercurrent of tension she maintained in her awareness. She remembered the subtle signs she had noted in the weeks leading up to the will reading, the carefully timed questions, the casual suggestions that masked intentions, the patterns of communication that had seemed innocuous, but now revealed a deeper narrative of expectation and preparation. Helen's gaze fell on a small stack of letters on the side table, correspondence she had maintained with Allison Reed, the lawyer who had helped guide her through the precise legal steps necessary to ensure the outcome reflected fairness and her long-term planning. William glanced toward the letters and back at his mother, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them without words, a shared understanding of the meticulous preparation that had governed the previous day's events. The room remained silent, the quiet punctuated only by the soft ticking of the antique clock, each tick a reminder of the measured passage of time and the unfolding of consequence. Helen moved to the desk and adjusted the papers once more, ensuring that everything remained aligned and orderly, a physical manifestation of the structure she had imposed on an otherwise unpredictable situation. Outside, the wind shifted the leaves along the driveway, casting moving shadows across the floor, a reminder that the world continued beyond the walls of the house, even as the household's private reckoning lingered in memory and observation. William remained thoughtful, occasionally glancing at the staircase leading to Romy's suite, the absence of her presence emphasizing the result of her choices and the weight of Helen's calm observation. Every action, every gesture, every carefully considered step taken by Helen reinforced the clarity and decisiveness of her perspective, leaving a sense of balance restored and awareness heightened. She took a slow breath, her posture relaxed yet precise, absorbing the quiet strength of the morning, and in that stillness, acknowledged the subtle shifts in perception, the importance of vigilance, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that careful preparation had achieved the intended outcome without a word of confrontation, leaving the household in a state of subdued order and reflective understanding. Helen Thompson moved to the large bay window overlooking the manicured garden, her hands resting lightly on the sill as she observed the shifting patterns of sunlight across the lawn. The roses she had tended for decades caught the light, their petals soft and vivid against the green, a subtle reminder of patience and care nurtured over years. William Thompson lingered nearby, his gaze occasionally flicking to his mother, a mix of curiosity and tentative respect in his eyes, noticing the unspoken composure that Helen maintained. The house was quiet, the morning air carrying the faint scent of brewed coffee and the lingering traces of a light breakfast. Yet beneath the calm surface, attention remained as the outcome of the previous evening settled in the minds of all present. Helen's thoughts returned to the months preceding the will reading, the carefully observed patterns of Romy Johnson, the timing of her questions, the subtle probing for information, the casual remarks that now seemed designed to test boundaries. She allowed herself a measured breath, acknowledging the complexity of human behavior and the careful planning that had been necessary to maintain fairness and foresight. The soft ticking of the clock marked the minutes as if counting the gradual unraveling of manipulation, each second reinforcing the sense of control Helen had achieved. She arranged the papers on the side table once more, straightening each stack, aligning edges with deliberate care, a physical reflection of the order and precision she maintained internally. William's voice, low and contemplative, broke the silence, noting the clarity of his mother's planning, the subtle but decisive measures that ensured Romy's earlier attempts at influence were neutralized without confrontation. Helen responded with calm acknowledgement, her tone even, conveying neither triumph nor irritation, simply the measured result of careful preparation and disciplined observation. Outside, the leaves swirled gently in the morning breeze, sunlight creating dappled patterns on the driveway and garden paths, a quiet contrast to the intricate interplay of intentions within the household. Helen allowed her attention to linger on small details, the neat alignment of books on the shelves, the placement of vases and decorative objects, the subtle order that reflected the clarity and foresight she had applied to the legal arrangements. William observed silently, absorbing the presence of authority and the unspoken lessons of observation, patience, and meticulous action that had guided the previous evening. The calm atmosphere was deliberate, a buffer against lingering tension, a space where decisions could be understood, internalized, and respected. Helen's mind traced the steps taken to anticipate outcomes, recognize patterns, and act with deliberate patience, each decision reinforcing her position as a quiet but unyielding center of influence and awareness within her family. The household remained orderly, the quiet punctuated by the soft movement of air through the open windows, and in that quiet, Helen continued to survey, reflect, and acknowledge the subtle shifts in relationships and understanding, confident in the measured balance she had achieved and the clarity that now defined the morning. Helen Thompson moved toward the sunroom, the glass walls revealing the soft shimmer of morning light across the dewy lawn, her hands gently brushing the edges of the window frames as she walked. The garden outside was quiet except for the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by the light breeze, the familiar sounds offering a contrast to the stillness within the house. William Thompson followed, keeping a measured distance, his expression thoughtful as he considered the clarity and resolve his mother exhibited, noting how calmly she managed the space and the subtle indications of control embedded in every action. Helen's gaze shifted to the small table by the sofa, where a neat stack of correspondence and legal notes lay, each page meticulously organized, a testament to the patience and foresight that guided her decisions. She reached for a cup of tea, the porcelain smooth beneath her fingers, and poured the steaming liquid with care, allowing the aroma to fill the room, an understated comfort amidst lingering reflection. William observed quietly, the soft clink of the cup against the saucer marking a rhythm in the otherwise silent room, a rhythm that mirrored the deliberate pacing of his mother's thoughts. Helen allowed herself a brief pause, recalling the subtle maneuvers she had noticed in recent months, the shifts in Romy Johnson's tone during family conversations, the casual but pointed suggestions, the moments that hinted at plans that Helen now understood with perfect clarity. She straightened the papers, aligning edges and smoothing creases, each gesture deliberate, signaling calmness and command without a word. The room seemed to absorb her presence, the warmth of the sunlight balancing the cool stillness of the early morning, highlighting her composed posture and measured movements. William's gaze flickered to the stairway, the awareness of Romy's absence noticeable in the quiet, yet the absence itself spoke volumes about the consequence of her prior actions. Helen's eyes lingered on the lines of the furniture, the subtle arrangement of cushions, the placement of small decorative objects, each detail echoing the meticulous attention that had defined her approach to both household and family matters. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily, marking the passage of time and underscoring the patient unfolding of events as Helen traced in her mind the sequences that had led to the present balance of understanding and quiet authority. Every gesture and observation reinforced the order and composure she maintained, a reflection of careful planning and disciplined foresight. William remained quiet, absorbing the nuances of his mother's calm management, the subtle control and observation that ensured the household's equilibrium, and the integrity of the arrangements made. Helen took a slow, steady breath, her hands resting lightly on the table, acknowledging the satisfaction of measured action and the clarity of consequence. The room filled with the quiet assurance that careful attention and deliberate patience had yielded the intended understanding, and the household now settled into a space of subdued reflection and composed awareness. Helen Thompson remained seated at the breakfast table, the morning light spilling through the windows and casting long, slender shadows across the polished wood. The kettle hissed softly as it finished boiling, a gentle, consistent sound that contrasted with the undercurrent of reflection that lingered in her thoughts. William Thompson sipped his coffee in silence, his attention occasionally flicking to his mother as if seeking guidance or reassurance in the quiet authority she exuded. Helen's hands rested lightly on the table, fingers interlacing, the subtle gesture communicating focus and calm without the need for words. She reviewed the details of the estate planning documents once more, her eyes tracing the precise language, the alignment of clauses, the clarity of bequests that had been carefully arranged over years to ensure fairness and to protect against the subtleties of manipulation she had observed in Romy Johnson. Outside, the wind shifted the branches of the oak tree near the driveway, the leaves rustling softly against each other, a quiet backdrop to the unfolding reflection inside the home. Helen's mind traveled through the sequence of observations she had made in the weeks leading up to the will reading, the moments when Romy had asked questions just carefully enough to gather information, the conversations that seemed casual but revealed intention upon closer scrutiny, the patterns of influence that were now evident in the clarity of hindsight. She adjusted the placement of the teacups, aligning them precisely with the edge of the table, an act that mirrored the precision and deliberate care with which she approached every aspect of her household and family affairs. William watched quietly, noting the subtle control his mother maintained, the way she conveyed order and thoughtfulness through action rather than overt expression, the calm authority that carried weight without raising its voice. Helen allowed herself a slow, measured breath, acknowledging the effectiveness of observation, patience, and careful planning, understanding that these qualities had ensured the integrity of the estate and the clarity of outcome. The soft ticking of the clock punctuated the room, marking time with impartial consistency, each tick a reminder of the careful orchestration and foresight that had guided the previous days. Helen's attention moved briefly to the arrangement of flowers on the sideboard, their colors muted but harmonious, a reflection of balance maintained and attention to detail preserved. The subtle light, the quiet warmth of the room, and the absence of tension allowed Helen to contemplate the gradual restoration of equilibrium within the household, the way knowledge and careful preparation had neutralized prior intentions of manipulation, leaving a space of calm authority and reflective satisfaction. William's glance toward his mother conveyed understanding, a recognition of her meticulous care and the depth of her foresight, the silent acknowledgement of lessons in patience, observation, and measured action that had been woven into the fabric of the morning. Helen took another slow breath, her posture relaxed yet deliberate, fully present in the quiet stability she had cultivated, aware of the subtleties of perception and consequence, and confident in the steady, unspoken influence she maintained over the balance of the household. Helen Thompson stood by the mantel, her fingers lightly resting on the edge as she surveyed the room, the soft afternoon sunlight filtering through the tall windows and casting gentle patterns on the polished floor. The house seemed to hold its breath, the quiet punctuated only by the distant hum of the air conditioning and the faint rustle of leaves from the oak tree outside. William Thompson paced slowly near the kitchen doorway, his movements restrained, as though each step required careful consideration. His mind still processing the clarity and authority his mother had demonstrated throughout the morning. Helen's gaze shifted toward the arrangement of framed photographs along the wall, each image a subtle reminder of the family's history and the care she had invested in guiding it. Her eyes lingered on the small details, the alignment of frames, the placement of decorative objects, the neatness of each element reflecting the same meticulous approach she had taken to the estate planning. A cup of tea steamed gently on the side table, the aroma of chamomile blending with the faint scent of polished wood, creating an atmosphere of calm observation. Helen's thoughts returned briefly to Romy Johnson, imagining the quiet shock and realization settling in, understanding that the meticulous preparation and patient observation had revealed truths without a single raised voice or overt confrontation. William paused near the staircase, glancing at the second-floor hallway where Romy had retreated, recognizing the subtle shifts in posture and presence that indicated the consequences of her prior actions. Helen allowed a small, controlled exhale, acknowledging the balance restored, the fairness reinforced, and the subtle authority she maintained within the household. She moved toward the dining table, adjusting the alignment of placemats and silverware with deliberate care, each movement precise, intentional, and calm, reflecting the inner steadiness that defined her approach to both family and household affairs. William observed silently, taking in the measured actions, the unspoken lessons of patience, observation, and strategic anticipation that Helen embodied so naturally. Outside, the light shifted slightly as the sun arced across the sky, highlighting the leaves and the driveway, the ordinary world continuing while the intricacies of household dynamics remained under careful consideration. Helen's mind traced the sequence of decisions and observations that had led to this quiet clarity, the subtle maneuvers that ensured integrity and fairness, the attentive awareness that had preserved order and authority without confrontation. Each gesture, each adjustment, each measured breath reinforced the sense of control and calm she projected, a quiet demonstration of effectiveness that left William both reflective and quietly appreciative of his mother's insight and foresight. The house held a sense of deliberate stillness, the air charged with calm observation and thoughtful presence, a testament to the patient management of relationships, perception, and consequence that Helen maintained as she moved through the afternoon, fully aware of the subtle shifts in understanding and perception within the household. Helen Thompson stood in the library, her hand resting lightly on the spine of a book as she surveyed the quiet room, the afternoon sun creating a warm glow that softened the edges of the polished shelves and the leather-bound volumes. William Thompson sat nearby in a comfortable armchair, his posture relaxed yet attentive, observing his mother with a sense of measured respect and recognition for the calm authority she maintained throughout the day. The faint scent of old paper and polished wood filled the air, a quiet reminder of the history and stability that Helen represented within the household. She allowed her eyes to trace the lines of the room, noting the subtle arrangement of furniture, the alignment of decorative objects, and the gentle order that seemed to radiate from her presence. Every detail, from the placement of a small vase to the neatness of the side table, reflected the discipline and care that Helen had cultivated over decades, each gesture deliberate and precise, a testament to her control and foresight. Outside, the soft rustle of leaves and the distant sound of a lawnmower signaled the continuation of ordinary life, contrasting with the careful attention and quiet reflection within the walls of the home. Helen's thoughts returned briefly to the events of the morning, the careful observation of Romy Johnson's demeanor, the subtle shifts in posture and tone that had revealed intentions and expectations, and the clarity with which outcomes had been secured without confrontation. She moved to the window, adjusting the blinds to allow a bit more sunlight in, the warm rays illuminating the polished floor and casting soft shadows that seemed to move with the rhythm of the day. William observed silently, noting the composed movements and measured attention to detail, understanding the depth of planning and anticipation that had guided the morning's events and the quiet authority Helen continued to exercise. Helen picked up a folded letter from the side table, scanning its contents briefly, her expression calm, almost serene, absorbing the nuances and implications without need for hurried action or overt response. Each breath she took, each slight adjustment of her posture, conveyed steadiness and careful consideration, the presence of someone fully aware of consequences and subtly directing the household's equilibrium. The room was suffused with a sense of quiet reflection, the natural light and orderly surroundings reinforcing the subtle dominance and composure Helen maintained, a measured presence that allowed observation, anticipation, and understanding to govern the space. William shifted slightly, acknowledging the unspoken lessons of patience, observation, and disciplined foresight, recognizing how effectively his mother had navigated and managed the complexities of family dynamics and the aftermath of revelation. Helen's attention moved to a small decorative clock on the mantel, its soft ticking marking time with a steady rhythm, a reminder that the careful management of relationships, perceptions, and actions required awareness and patience. The afternoon unfolded with a gentle, measured calm, Helen's quiet authority and thoughtful presence ensuring that the household remained balanced, composed, and reflective, each moment reinforcing the clarity, control, and careful orchestration that had defined the day and established a lasting sense of equilibrium. Helen Thompson moved back into the sunroom as the late afternoon light shifted, casting long, soft shadows across the polished floorboards and the carefully arranged furnishings. The warmth of the sunlight highlighted the textures of the rug and the delicate pattern on the curtains, a quiet contrast to the complex web of family dynamics that had unfolded over the previous days. William Thompson sat in a chair near the window, his posture relaxed but attentive, observing the calm composure of his mother with a mixture of admiration and quiet reflection. Helen's eyes traced the lines of the room, the subtle order of furniture, and the alignment of decorative objects, each detail reinforcing the deliberate care and patience she had exercised. She allowed herself a small, measured exhale, acknowledging the sense of resolution that had settled into the household, the careful orchestration of events that had guided outcomes without confrontation. The faint hum of the heating system and the distant sound of a lawnmower outside provided a gentle, consistent background as Helen's thoughts returned to the sequence of planning and observation that had characterized the past weeks. Every subtle action, every quiet observation, every measured gesture had contributed to the clarity and fairness now evident in the family's understanding of their circumstances. William's gaze occasionally flicked to the staircase leading to Romy Johnson's suite, her absence marked by the awareness of consequence and the reflection of prior decisions, highlighting the quiet authority Helen had maintained. Helen moved slowly through the room, her hands brushing lightly over the surfaces of tables and shelves, each touch deliberate and precise, an embodiment of careful management and thoughtful foresight. The soft ticking of the clock punctuated the stillness, a reminder of the passage of time and the unhurried unfolding of awareness, observation, and understanding within the household. Helen's posture remained poised and controlled, her movements intentional, her attention to detail unwavering, a reflection of the measured patience that had guided her through the delicate balance of relationships and consequence. The sunlight shifted subtly, illuminating the garden beyond, the gentle sway of trees and the quiet sound of wind in the leaves creating a natural rhythm that mirrored the calm but deliberate atmosphere inside. William remained quiet, absorbing the lessons of observation, foresight, and deliberate action that Helen embodied, understanding the subtle authority and the quiet, effective influence she maintained over the household. Helen allowed herself a slow, steady breath, a moment of reflective acknowledgement, appreciating the subtle shifts in awareness and perception that her patient vigilance had produced. The room held a sense of serene stability, the careful placement of every object, the measured presence of her and her son, and the quiet aftermath of events all combining to reinforce the balance, fairness, and thoughtful control that defined the household. As the light softened into the early evening, Helen remained centered and composed, fully present in the space she had cultivated, aware of the delicate equilibrium she had established and the enduring clarity of her actions, the quiet authority she maintained now fully integrated into the household, leaving a lasting sense of calm, reflection, and measured understanding.